Brown, and I am the owner of Brown Dutton Law Firm in Marietta. We're a family law firm. We practice primarily domestic litigation. And today I have Tracy Kreider with me, one of our other partners here.
Yes. Hi, I'm Tracy Kreider. I'm a partner at Brown Dutton, and I have been working in family law since I started practicing law over 10 years ago. So I'm excited to get to learn more about some art therapy today and some great resources for our clients.
Yes. So Teresa, thanks so much for taking time out today to talk to us. I'm going to give you the opportunity to just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your business, and we'll go from there.
Okay, perfect. Hi, I'm Teresa Woodruff. I am the owner and director of Art It Out Therapy Center. We have offices in East Cobb, Marietta, as well as in Vinings, and we specialize in using art in therapy for children, teens, and young adults.
Awesome. When did y'all open?
We opened in 2009.
Okay, and how many counselors do y'all have?
We have 20 clinicians and 9 graduate interns who all see people individually as well as in group therapy.
That's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about your business.
Sure. So we specialize in using art in therapy. And people always ask, why is art helpful? And one of the main reasons is that children can often communicate visually thoughts and feelings that are difficult to verbalize. Drawing out feelings sometimes just feels easier because they don't have to put words onto how they feel. Instead, they can use colors, lines, and shapes to represent their feelings. Children of divorce specifically might even have conflicting feelings or multiple feelings at the same time, which can be pretty confusing and difficult to articulate. It's not uncommon that a kid may feel happy and then guilty for feeling happy, or during the holidays, feel excited and then at the same time really miss one of his parents. Having intense feelings that can be really overwhelming to children. And so we use art as a safe way to get the feelings out and give the children a sense of control over their situation.
That's awesome. And I think that's something that we see all the time, whether it's the holidays or somebody just going through a divorce and, a client calls and says that they have a child, maybe it's a 5-year-old, 6-year-old that's doing things they've never done before. And they're like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what to do. Like, my child has never acted like this in 6 years. And so frequent, it's just a situational issue that they're going through because of something's changing in their lives.
Yeah. And I definitely think we often see exactly what you were talking about, Teresa, where, a client will come in and say, I'm worried. I'm very concerned about my child because, when they're going to this other parent's house, they're crying, they're telling me they miss me, they're presenting with all these emotions, which really make me feel like they're struggling. And when they go to discuss it with the other parent, often they're met with, no, when the child comes to my house, they're having a great time and they love being there. You're just making this up. And I think often the answer is that it's more complicated than that. Because as you point out, like, the kid is struggling with both sides of that issue and often has some stress and anxiety related to that.
Definitely.
And then communicating it is really difficult. We ask kids how they feel, and putting words on these intense feelings is really hard. Sometimes when we have them draw it out, it's just so much easier for them to draw. The drawing's a natural language for kids, and they don't have to put some sort of word that we've given this feeling. It's more intense than the word that we've given it.
Is there because, when I think of something that comes to my mind immediately is just younger children, but is art therapy for children of all ages?
It sure is. In fact, in a minute, I'll show you some examples. And the way I've structured them, it starts with the younger and then gets a little bit older. Let me talk really quick about control first. Sure. Our children who are going through divorce or whose parents are divorced, they often feel like they just don't have any control. We tell them where to be and when to be there. And so art's a great way for them to practice some structured control. They can make choices, they can problem solve, and they can feel completely in control of whatever they're doing. I'm going to show you some examples in a second, but I really want you to know that through art, we can practice these skills in a really safe and secure way. They can learn how to express their feelings more appropriately, how to cope with these changes in transition, and then how to manage any worry or anxiety that they may have. So here's some examples. When we talk about art therapy, it's so much easier just to show you examples and what kind of stuff we do. And like I said, these start with some younger and then get a little bit older. Expressing feelings. This is a painting that some young child made about expressing the feelings, and each different color represents a feeling that he had at that time. And so this really shows that sometimes we have this swirl or mix of all different feelings at the same time. And so when you ask your child, hey, how did you feel at dad's house? Or how did you feel when mom came to pick you up? They might not be able to answer it because it might be a lot of different confusing, intense feelings all at the same time. But through this art activity, they were able to show all these different feelings, and then they were able to talk about it and talk with their parents about it, which was really helpful. We really like for the parents to get some insight into the child's mind through these drawings. So let me show you some more. This is another really similar one that a child a little bit older did. It was, what is in their heart right now? And so they took this heart and they drew different designs and shapes, different colors and feelings that were in their heart. And then they were able to explain it to their parents of this is everything that's going on with them right now.
So a question that I have, and I'm sure probably a lot of our clients have, is when you have a child that's dealing with these conflicted feelings and kind of struggling with this, apart from just getting them plugged into great therapies like the kind of thing you do you have any advice for parents to sort of help their child when they're having this sort of like really conflicted presentation about, all the transitions and things going on through a divorce?
The first thing I would say is don't force them to talk about it. Recognize that talking might just be too hard. So whether you let them play it out or draw a picture of how they feel, or if they're older, they could even have a journal that they could draw in whenever they want. Because I think talking about it can just be too hard sometimes, but it is helpful to get it out through art or with play. Yeah.
One question I have, and it is probably more related to the earlier picture, but this could definitely come into play too, is do y'all give parents or help parents with tools on what to do with this information that they get? Because, I have a 4 and a 6-year-old, and I think if I saw something like that and I asked them, I might not know where to start, but is that something that you assist the parents with, and those tools on what questions to ask and how to discuss that with their children?
We sure do. So something that's different about our practice is we like for the parents to come in at the end of every single session. So our goal is to enhance communication between the family members. It's amazing if they can make progress when they're with us, but we know they're not going to be with us all the time. They're only going to be with us as their therapist for an hour a week at the most, right? And so we really want them to start talking to their parents more. So when we have families that are divorced, we like for them to alternate bringing the child to therapy. We'd prefer that they usually not come at the same time, because sometimes then it creates some stress and anxiety in the room for the child. But we like for the parents to come, and at the end of the session, we'll have one parent in there with the child, and we explain what we ask them to do. And we have the child explain their drawing, and then we can use it as a conversation starter.
That's great, because I think that's something that so many people struggle with, is just when it's something new for the parent, they also don't have the tools to communicate with their child and really know what's going on. And too often they just want to ask them because they've never dealt with it before. So they just want to say what's going on and they expect a response. Mm-hmm. But that just might not be a reality for them at that point.
So we help guide parents on what questions to ask and when.
Awesome.
This artwork right here, on the left side, the child drew how they feel. And then on the right side, they drew how they want to feel. And they put a bridge in the middle. And what we talked about is what skills we can use to get from the chaotic, really intense feeling over to the calm feeling. And so this piece of artwork they took home, and it became their visual reminder of, oh yeah, I need to use those skills that we talk about in therapy. Sometimes when we have these visual reminders and they take them home, it reminds them to use the skills when they're not with us in therapy. Wow. I'm going to show you more. This is another one. It's an example of someone just put their inner thoughts and feelings on paper. They felt torn and scattered, is what they said, based on what was going on with their family. We were then able to use this as a conversation starter to talk with their family about how they felt. And I feel like when you see something like this, it's really powerful because you could say, I feel torn and scattered, but you don't really understand how intense or chaotic that could feel unless you see it. With a lot of kids whose parents are going through a divorce or separation, they have anger or frustration bottled up inside of them. And we like to use the analogy of it's like a volcano. And if we keep this anger or frustration bottled up and we don't release it appropriately, it might erupt or, we might feel like we're exploding. And so this volcano, someone made and used it as a reminder of, oh yeah, I need to use my skills to get out my anger appropriately so that I don't erupt or explode on people. This is another one where someone put their thoughts and feelings down on paper. They just needed to remind themselves that the divorce was not their fault.
Just to touch on that really quick, Teresa, do you have any advice or ways that parents that are going through this type of transition in their family can support their kids to understand that it's not their fault? Obviously, any parent we meet with is going to say one of their primary goals is we don't want the children to think this is about them or this is, no parent wants that burden on their child. So what would be some ways, apart from just saying it, to support your child and have them understand that, that they don't have any blame in the circumstances that their family's in?
That's such a good question because I feel like we're often talking with parents on how do you communicate enough to your child so that they know it's not their fault, but then still not tell them the adult problems. They don't need to be, treated like an adult. They need to understand things in a way that or be told things that are understandable at their developmental level, right? And so they need to be told that, mommy and daddy are separating or mommy and daddy are divorcing and it has nothing to do with you. We had our own reasons that have nothing to do with you. And then not go into any detail about what the reasons are, but just help them understand it's really not about them and just reiterate it and reiterate it. We see a lot of kids who through therapy start talking about, this is very common, they start talking about that, well, mom and dad always fought over me, or they fought about me, or, they argued and I always came up in the arguments. And so, even though parents say it's not their fault, it's not the kid's fault, we hear that the kids had reason to think maybe it was. And so I would just urge parents, just be so careful because kids already feel like it's their fault sometimes. And, if they know that the parents were arguing about parenting styles or some sort of aspect about the kid, it's just more and more important that you reiterate it is adult problems that have nothing to do with the child.
Well, and I think something that we see far too often is, parents aren't always giving kids the credit that they are due. I mean, kids hear and soak up way more than you think. I can think of in my life when I'm talking on the phone and I think my 6-year-old is paying no attention. And then 2 days later, she'll say something about what I said on the phone. And it's just a little reminder that they are always listening and kids are so smart. And sometimes I don't think they get the credit that, that parents really just need to pay more attention to what is said around them with an earshot. Just because they're in their bed certainly doesn't mean that they don't know what's going on downstairs.
Denny, let me tag onto that and say we also have some children who experience a lot of anxiety and stress before the parents make that decision to get divorced. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of parents feel, I know a lot of us feel like, well, let's stick it out for the kids. And I think there is some value in that. But I also think the children are picking up on when there's unhappiness in the home. And if there's fighting and if there's stress, the children are picking up on that and they are feeling anxious and worried about it as well.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have a couple more to show you. This is one that a teenager made about what it feels like to be in their shoes. Again, we were able to use this as a conversation starter with the parents. There are a lot of words in here, so I'm not going to leave it on long enough for you to read it, but just know that it helps us to understand, once they can put it out on paper, it helps us understand what it feels like to be in their shoes. And then this is a more positive one that we did about how to focus on the positive traits and the good times and the things that are good in their life, because sometimes there does feel like there's so much grief or sadness or transition. And so we really like to focus sometimes on what is positive, what is going well. Yeah. Another thing that we haven't touched on yet is when we talk about what can parents do to help. I know I said give them a journal or give them an opportunity to make art, but think about making art with your child. As a parent, when you make art, especially if you want to put on some calming music and make art to calming music, it can really relax and bring down the mood and relax your whole environment. It can relax you. You might even become a softer, calmer parent after making art. So I really encourage you, make art with your children, use it as conversation starters, and make art together. And then lastly, don't force them to talk about it. They might not want to talk about it, and that's okay. Especially when they're going through something really intense, don't force them to talk.
So I have a question because in kind of just putting myself in my shoes with my, 5-year-old daughter, thinking what would happen if I wanted to do that? How do you, and maybe the answer is you shouldn't try to do this, but how do you sort of direct it to more substantive points, get the art directed towards something that can be a conversation starter? Because I know when I sit down to do art with my daughter, which we do on occasion because she loves drawing and painting and all that kind of stuff, she'll just be like, oh, mommy, I'm going to draw this. And it would not go over well in my mind for me to be like, let's do this and talk about it. So do you have any advice for how parents can do that, but with also not pushing too hard, walking the line of not, we need to draw a picture about this divorce. We need to draw a picture about how you feel about mommy and daddy versus just ending up, coloring in a coloring book that doesn't necessarily get you where you want to be.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's two different things. I think there's one part of it is just making art to have fun with your child. Whether you're making a holiday ornament or, doing some sort of craft, and even decorating Christmas cookies can be making art together, And so just doing that for bonding and connecting, I think that is one really important thing to do. Another question is when they're making art, how do we talk with them about it, right? How do we communicate with them about the art? And I would say as much as possible, ask open-ended questions. Never make assumptions. I've definitely said, oh, tell me about this person. And then I've learned it's a dragon, And so, especially with my own kids, when they're 4 or 5, sometimes it doesn't always look like what it's supposed to be. So I'd ask very open-ended questions. Tell me more about what's going on in the picture. And let's make up a story about it. Children, when they make up stories, usually there's a little bit of their own self into the story. We call it projecting, right? And so usually there's a little bit of something that's really going on with them in a story that they make up. And so if they're drawing and you have them make up a story, don't ask them too many questions about it. Just let them run with it. Let them tell their story. Another thing is focus on one aspect of the drawing to talk about, as opposed to just saying, oh, that's good. We don't want our kids to get in the habit of making drawings only because they want them to be good. We want them to be able to get their true thoughts and feelings and their creativity out on paper. So we want to try not to say that's good. Instead, we want to say, wow, you used 3 different shades of green. Tell me all about those 3 shades of green. I can tell that this tree took you a lot of effort. What could live in this tree? Where might this tree be in real life? I wrote down some tips and I wrote them just last night on our blog for you guys. It's on artitout.com. You can look at our blog, but it talks about how to talk with your children about artwork and about the artwork they make. Because I know that this is kind of new for most parents. We're so quick to say, oh, what a great drawing. Thanks. I'm going to put it on the fridge and have that be it. Right. But we want to use it as a conversation starter.
So what would you say, at what point should a parent consider starting therapy for their child? Obviously, we work with folks that are going through divorce or custody changes, maybe changes in their parenting schedule. So those are all kind of big transitions. But as a parent, what would you say, hey, if your child is exhibiting some of these behaviors, maybe it's a good time to think about introducing them to some type of therapy and figuring out what's a good fit?
So usually when a child's acting out behaviorally, they're trying to communicate something. So for the younger children, it might be an outburst. For the older children, it might be hiding in their room or starting to do poorly in school. Usually then they're trying to communicate that they're not as resilient as what you think they might be. They're struggling. And so I would say at any of those points, if they struggle for more than a few weeks, you probably want to look into getting them some help. Also, if they have trouble sleeping, or it starts affecting their school life, I would consider getting them some help. Guys, I see a question. Do you see this?
Yeah, I do. I can read the question if you want. And then I want to talk a little bit about how you tailor your practice to different age groups, because I think it's so important to understand that art therapy is not just for, obviously some of those artwork were much older children, but just how you tailor your specific counseling to different age groups and how it can be helpful to them. But yeah, let's address this question. It says, how do you deal with a teen who was an A and B student before the divorce and now struggles to pass it all?
Usually, and I know we just kind of touched on this a little bit, but usually when children start doing poorly in school, it means that they are internally struggling a lot more than what we might think. And so one thing I would think would be helpful is getting them someone to talk to, whether it's taking them to a therapist or seeing if the school counselor has the time to talk with them. School counselors are really good at meeting with a child and then saying, hey, they're going to need more help than what I can provide. But sometimes they're a great first start is take them to the school counselor or call the school counselor and ask if she or he can see them. And get them to be able to externalize what's really going on. So getting thoughts and feelings out, whether it's verbally or drawing, because that's probably what's happening is they're trapping these thoughts and feelings inside, and then it's just coming out with these negative behaviors like failing grades.
So the next question, and I'm going to just summarize it, but the parties, it appears, has a 50-50 custody schedule, and the child may know more about the situation than they should have known. And they are not wanting to go visit with one parent or the other, despite that 50-50 schedule. How could that parent work with the child to assist in that situation?
It's so tough because, we tell children where to go and when, and they really don't have any choice. And it sounds like this specific child might be kind of fighting back on that. So if we can figure out a way to give them some choice, it might be, hey, you have to go spend tonight with mom, or you have to go spend tonight with dad, but then you get to choose what you do after, or you get to choose what you take with you. I also like when children can take transitional objects back and forth. So for younger children, this is as simple as stuffed animals, but as they get older, it might be other things. It might be, even like a video game that they really like, but taking things back and forth can help bridge that gap. And it can also make them more motivated to go with the parent that they might not be wanting to go with. I know as a parent, it's really tough, right? Because you want your child to trust you and understand that, hey, I want you here, but also you have to go, right? The agreement is that you're going to go. And so you need to do it, but I love you and I want you here, but you need to go because that's what we agreed upon.
What advice do you have? Because we see this all the time in our practice. You have two parents, and for whatever reason, they cannot get on this same page, because I absolutely agree. It's, always best when the parents can work together and try to come up with ideas and strategies to, make the child feel supported as a team while they're still, following their court order or doing what they need to do. But we see situations all the time where, one parent is just not on board. They are not willing. They don't think therapy is valuable, or it's my way or the highway. The parenting styles are just extremely different. If you would be in the situation of giving advice to a parent who has just got somebody that from their perspective is not on board, not willing to work with them, what advice would you give to them to be able to support their child when they're not going to be able to get that other side on board?
It's so tough because we see a lot of that in
Definitely.
In the end, if you have joint decision making, it's whoever has that final authority for medical. There are those 4 areas, but medical is therapy. Therapy falls under that category. And so in the end, whoever has that final decision making is the one who can make that decision. And if that's not you, I know that's tough. But if you can't get the other parent on board and they have final decision making, it's really their call. I do like talking about therapy as if it was a physical difference. If your child needed some sort of medication, or if they needed insulin, or if they needed to fix a broken arm, you would certainly take them to a doctor then. But when they have an issue going on mentally, sometimes people are resistant. And, in my mind, it's not really any different, that just getting the help that your child needs.
Yeah. And I think a big struggle with that is from a parent side is feeling responsible for the reason that your child needs the therapy. So there's the struggle of, getting them help, but is getting them help admitting that as a parent, you did something to create that. And so I think it's like this cycle that people deal with of not wanting to get their child, into some sort of therapy, art therapy, whatever it is that's going to work better for them.
So I saw a question of, do you force the teen to go to therapy? How do you make them go, right? Or do you even make them go? And then also, do you make them go visit the parent that they're not supposed to go visit, right? And so, that they don't want to go visit. With therapy, you can't force a teen to go. You can't force somebody to do therapy. But as a parent, you are able to say, you're going to do this, and then you're going to get this, whether it's a reward or, we're going to do this thing after. I know as a parent, I've been through lots of times where my child didn't want to eat broccoli or didn't want to eat anything. Or, my 4-year-old wanted to go a month without wearing clothes, but it wasn't okay. Right. And so there are times when you say, hey, I understand you don't want to, but I'm your parent and it's my job to know what's best for you. And this is something we're going to do. And I need you to promise me you will give it 3 tries. And I really think you'll like it after 3 tries. I always tell parents, if you can get your kid in the door, we'll get them from there. You just got to get them in the door the first time or 2, and then it's going to be smooth sailing. They're going to love coming. Our office is creative. It's fun. They're going to make art. They're going to make slime or do spray paint or clay. They're going to have fun while they work on therapy skills. But as a parent, you got to talk them into coming in the door. And the motivator for children it's different. You as a parent, your child's motivator. Some people are motivated with money or time on an iPad or food or doing a special activity or going out to eat together. What motivates your child, hopefully.
Is there a specific age group that you see is just the most difficult period for parents in your practice area? That's just like, there's this one age group that just seems to have more trouble, or do you think it's just child specific?
I think it's child specific. And I see a lot of parents say, one of my children is coping or adapting just fine, but the other one is really giving me a hard time. And so it's not so much about the age, just to the child's personality and just the child.
So can you tell us just a little bit about different art therapy and how that works for different age groups?
Sure. So for the younger children, the children who are 4 through maybe 8, a lot of it is less structured as to, we saw where they were putting they were using finger paint and they were putting their feelings down on paper, right? And so sometimes it looks more like that. It's less structured. It is a lot of parent involvement. We work a lot with the parents because the younger the child, the more we rely on the parents for help. But then as the children start to get to that 11, 12-year-old age, they don't want so much of their parents to be involved. They want to feel more independent. They want to feel like they can do it. And so we still talk to the parents on how they can help them at home, but it's definitely less of the parent help and more of the adolescent doing things on their own. And then as we get to the teenage years, it becomes even less of that. Teens really want to feel like they have their own space, their own person that they can talk to, that they can trust. And they don't want so much of the parent involvement. They don't want their parent to know what they're saying and what they're doing in therapy. And so I would say the younger the child is, the more we rely on the parent involvement and parent help.
And so if you are seeing a patient, whatever the age may be, do they have to have, say they're trying out art therapy, do they also need another form of, traditional therapy, or is it one and the same?
That's a great question. So it is one and the same. All of our therapists are trained in cognitive behavioral therapy and typical talk therapy. They all have masters in counseling or therapy, but they have a specialty in using art. And so there might just be some extra training they've had from us on how to use art in therapy to engage children and help children express themselves. But we tend to be people's only therapist. It's not a good use of time and money to have two different therapists. It might just be a conflict. And so we like to be their only therapist.
So I think you brought something up that made me think about older teenagers is, a lot of the times, I think kids don't feel like they have a neutral person to talk to, especially of an older child, right? So they think that I can't go to my mom or I can't go to my dad, and they really thrive talking to a therapist. How do you handle the issue of, the confidentiality with that child? Because at that point, they really understand, I'm going to tell you something and I'm telling you because I don't want you to tell my mom or dad, but also helping mom or dad cope with whatever's going on with the teenager, with keeping that trust with the child?
That's a really good question, because trust is so important. And the older they get, especially through adolescence and teenage years, they want to have their own confidence. They don't want their parents to know everything that they say or do. So what we like to have parent meetings every few weeks. They tend to be about every 4 to 6 weeks, where the parents come in by themselves. We talk to the parents about the progress the child's making towards the goals, and the general themes that are coming up in therapy, but not saying specifics, not saying that their teen said they had a fight with a specific friend. We ask the parents, just trust us. We are going to tell you anything we think you need to know. If the child says anything about hurting themselves or someone else, of course, we're going to tell you. But we really want them to have their own place where they can feel like they can tell us anything and it not get back to you. So we're going to tell you things you need to know. We're going to tell you things that you can do at home to help, but we're not going to tell you every word that your child or teen says.
Yeah.
So one of the things I think I heard you say that you do individual sessions, but also some group sessions. Is that right? So how do you determine a child that would be a better candidate for a group type of therapy session as opposed to individual sessions?
That's a good question. So we tend to have children in group sessions if they have difficulty managing frustration, or if they have anxiety and really need help practicing those skills in front of other people. All of our groups are also tailored to children that have attention struggles, or they struggle with impulse control. In our groups, we tend to have children that already know what skills to do because maybe we've worked with them one-on-one, but they need help practicing the skills in a group setting. It's one thing to teach you how to drive a car, but it's another thing for you to go out and drive it, right? And so if we're working on managing frustration and then they're in a group where they're triggered by other children, it's a great way for them to practice those frustration management skills that we've already worked on.
So what would that look like in a group? What are some examples of skills that you would be working with for the kids?
So we work on frustration management a lot, and expressing feelings appropriately. So Jenny, I can say, in a one-on-one, I can try to trigger a child and make them frustrated, but it's probably not going to happen that much. It's not going to be that likely. But in a group setting, it is amazing how the littlest things deciding who's going to go first in a game, or if someone wins a game, or if we're making a mural together and we have to compromise on who's going to do which part, these can be so triggering. And so we work with them in the moment on these frustration management skills. We also will talk with children about being appropriately assertive. We also have some kids in the group that are really, really quiet and just not assertive enough. And sometimes they've seen someone else be overly assertive and get in trouble for it. And so then they've kind of gone the opposite way and developed a really shy, quiet personality. And so we work with them on how to be appropriately assertive so that you're getting heard and you're communicating in a way that people are understanding.
That's so interesting because I think of just, my daughter and their friends playing. And when you're one-on-one with your kid, a lot of things don't come up. And then all of a sudden their friends are together and you're like, who the heck are you? Like, what is happening right now? And so just having that peer interaction of, the mural is a really good example of someone who, might be over controlling, and then someone who lets someone else take control all of the time. And then you could see that in that group that you might not be able to see individually.
And it's so valuable to give them coaching in the moment. And it's different when they're in our therapy setting. You think as a parent, like, oh, I'll just do it. But it's so hard if you have other kids come over to your house and you're trying to coach everyone. It's just awkward, right? And so in a therapy setting, they're expecting it. They know they're going to get feedback about their behavior. They know they're going to get some gentle help on how to communicate in a way that's more successful. And they're all getting it. And so it really goes over well. We see a lot of progress in the groups.
Yeah. Well, in play dates, what also makes that so difficult is you also have the other parents, right?
Yeah.
So their parenting philosophies and your parenting philosophy. So if you're like, no, you can't climb on top of the playhouse, but the other parent's like, well, I let them climb on top of the playhouse. You're like, well, I mean, okay, I don't know what's the rule here. So that it makes it so much harder because you have all of the adults who have very different ideas on what's acceptable for that child.
Right.
Life's so funny. So tell us a little bit about, we saw a few different types of art, but you mentioned, I think you said like slime and other things beyond just drawing. I mean, so if you have a kid that's like, I can't even draw a stick figure, are they a bad candidate for art therapy if they're a terrible artist?
Not at all. Not at all. One of the things that we like to do with kids is we like to make slime because it's engaging. And when you're making slime, you have a lot of different choice. You can choose to put glitter in there. You can choose to put a glow-in-the-dark substance in there. You could choose to make it foam slime. There's not really one set way to make slime. There's actually a lot of different kinds of slime and a lot of different colors that you can make your slime. And so we have a lot of choice there. And they'll make slime, which is very tactile and hands-on. And then what we usually do is we usually give them some sort of homework to do with their slime that fits their therapeutic goal. Now, for children who have a lot of anxiety, they sometimes have trouble falling asleep. And so we'll say in the evening, we want you to lay in bed or first play with your slime, maybe at the kitchen table or on a placemat, nowhere near a carpet. And then when you're getting ready for bed, lay in bed and picture that your whole body is slime. Picture yourself kind of just like a blob melting into your bed. And we'll go through this guided visualization, which will take their mind off any anxiety or worries that they're having. And it'll give them something to focus their mind and their body on, which is, we call it a grounding technique where they're grounded laying in their bed, which will really help them to sleep better and thus be more focused during the day and better to handle their emotions during the day.
So this might be a silly question, but is there any value just to the sheer distraction of the project and opening up, because you're not thinking necessarily as much about what you're talking about if you're occupied doing something?
There definitely is. And it's funny that you should say that, because sometimes when kids have trouble talking, I will tell a parent, well, make art with them or go for a walk or go play basketball and see if they open up more. Right. So if their hands are doing something, sometimes their mouths just start talking because they're not forced to just sit and stare at the therapist or the person that they're talking to. Yeah,
I could see that being very useful. Just having, the ability to be doing something else. So there's not so much pressure on whatever you're talking about, because it's usually something that, they're not comfortable with. They're not comfortable with the situation. It doesn't feel right to them, whether they're expressing anger or, withdraw, just being distracted. It seems like it would be much easier to let some of that out.
So one question I have, how do you, or what process is there to sort of match a child with a particular therapist? I've heard clients over the years and therapists also say, this child really needs a male therapist, or this child would do well with somebody that's going to, be more direct or less direct and that sort of thing. As part of your practice, what goes into pairing up a child with a therapist?
That's a great question. So we have 2 phone intake coordinators, and they know all of our therapist styles in a lot of detail. They also know, sometimes we'll have a parent call in and say, it's really important that I have a Christian-based therapist, or it's really important that I don't, or it's really important that my therapist has specialty in children who have some gender identification struggles or differences. And so our intake specialists know each therapist's specialties. And when they talk to people on the phone, they do a really good job of matching them up on who would be the best fit. Yeah. And so as a parent, you don't have to know who you're calling to talk with. You don't have to know who would be a good fit. You're welcome to look at the website and read the bios and see if you kind of feel a connection with one person, and ask for therapy with that person specifically. But you're also welcome just to call and talk with the office, and they'll help you figure out who would be a great fit.
Well, something that I think is really special about your business is that you have 20 people that if someone is, they realize that, hey, I really like art therapy. I tried this person. They're not the ideal person for me. There's so many options within your business for them to try someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Do you have any more questions? I've learned so much.
Yeah.
I feel like I want to go home and be like, Austin, let's draw.
No, I think do you have any general advice, since the holidays are coming up? I feel like that's always a time where arguments between parents and families can flare up and things like that. Any general advice for parents to sort of keep the waters calm over the next few weeks as much as they can with their kids?
That's a great question. I think my first piece of advice would be try to keep your household as calm as possible. For some of you, this might be putting on calm music, whether it's holiday music or Enya is my personal favorite, and try to keep it calm. And if you notice that your own anxiety level is rising a little, do something to calm it down a little bit. I know we probably have a lot to do right now, like whether it's baking or wrapping or buying presents or, anything, but we have a lot going on during the holiday time. And so when you notice that you're starting to get agitated, try to do something to calm yourself down as a parent, because our kids are picking up on our own mood and what we're doing. They are picking up on it. And so just be mindful of your own mood, be mindful of how to calm yourself and model appropriate calming strategies. Yeah. If you need to take a break, if you need to put on the TV or do something so that you can go take a break, by all means do it, because a calmer parent will help your kids be calmer.
For sure. One thing I did want to mention, and I wanted to ask is, our reality right now is COVID. And I think a question that everyone has is, do they have the ability to meet with you in person?
Sure do. So we have virtual sessions, but I would say 95% of what we're doing is in person. So people come into our office, they are screened with temperature screenings at the door. We do hand sanitizer at the door. You have to wear a mask in our office, and the therapist keeps a mask on at all times right now as well. But we are offering in-person sessions.
Yeah, that's so important. I think, especially for what you do and the service that you're offering the children.
Created individual supply kits for all of our clients so that kids are not reaching into a pile of supplies and grabbing, and then the next client coming in and grabbing. So instead, they have their individual supply kits. was going to find some examples of them, but just a supply kit with a variety of different materials. And then we've allowed for extra cleaning and sanitizing between sessions as well.
And what is y'all's lag time? So if someone calls and says, I need to get my kid in with a counselor, whether it's an individual or group session, how quickly can that usually happen?
That's a good question. So it really depends on the parent's flexibility. If they say, hey, I'd love to get in with somebody, I'm completely flexible, usually we can get them in within a week or two. If they call and they say, we're only free on Tuesday afternoons, it might take a whole month, kind of depending on what their flexibility is.
And are your hours, do you have after, work hour times?
Yeah, our primary times that we're open are Monday through Friday from 12 to 8. And then we have some therapists who work on Saturdays.
Yeah,
Nice.
That's great to have that flexibility for people to bring their kids in after work. And so the kids don't have to miss school.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, Teresa, thank you so much. I feel like this has been a really great thing for us to learn about, to educate ourselves a little more and to educate our clients. We really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you, ladies, so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yes. Could you put your slide back up just with your contact information, and we'll leave it up there so that if anybody wants to reach out, they can get you directly. And of course, we can direct anyone who may ask with your information. Maybe.
We'll get there.
Hang on a second. There we go.
That is so impressive.
I know.
I was like, man, that's a really good drawing.
I think I love the bridge one where it's like on the left side, like all the crazy colors and the blue with the bridge.
Yes.
That was my favorite.
And such a good reminder. And it's funny, the one thing that I noticed in the one that was shattered that had all the pieces, I'm like, it's so separate, but every individual thing is so beautiful. So it's like you have all of these pretty things, but then you have all this space, and it's like it just needs to come together. So it's really cool to see the visual part of that.
Yeah.
Then to make it a metaphor for what would it take to bring your pieces together or, make you back whole.
Exactly. So, well, Teresa, thank you so much. It was so great talking with you, and I'll be talking to you soon, but we really appreciate your time.
That sounds great. Thank you, ladies, so much. Y'all have a great day.
You
All
too.
right. Happy holidays.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.